Welcome on in to another episode of the BKL Makes Me Want to Shout show. The Bills coming off a bye week, getting ready to take on the Carolina Panthers. We're going to break that down, talk about a couple different topics that we have on the agenda. Alongside Carl Jones, Matt Parrino, Ryan Talbot, I'm Josh Reed. The Bills go into that bye week losing 2 straight games. And Matt, in case you haven't heard, the sky is falling in Western New York. I mean, Bills fans are they are beside themselves. You would think that this team is 1-5 and they're circling the drain at this point.
Yeah, Ryan put together a really great article this week that highlighted 10 trade candidates for the Bills to kind of zero in on. And I thought he put it perfectly in that it's surprising to see the reaction from a lot of Bills fans. I get the sky is falling mentality. It happens in a portion of the fan base whenever anything goes wrong, right? And I think a look around the league over the course of the start of the season reveals the struggles that a lot of these teams go through. And, Tampa Bay being the most recent example of it against Detroit on Monday Night Football, it just looked like they couldn't do anything offensively. Couple explosive plays for the Lions, and you're looking at a loss there. Now they're sitting there at 5-2, and maybe not as dire of circumstances perhaps as the Bills, but they could write a lot of things over the next couple of weeks. And the other thing that I keep going back to too is like Sean McDermott uses this line, like he refuses to let his players ride the roller coaster. I think sometimes fans, rightfully so, like ride this emotional roller coaster because it's such a week-to-week league. Like you have 7 days to like fester in a loss or things that you think are going wrong with your team. And in those days, in a 24-hour news cycle, when you're consuming content all the time, it can feel like the sky is falling in a lot of ways. But like, look at the headlines in Kansas City a month ago, and then look at the headlines today. They are the best thing in the NFL world once again on the high of a 3-game winning streak. And Ryan, I thought you said it really well in the reaction to everybody's reaction to your story.
Yeah, the fan temperature right now is chilly. It's a good thing my wife's making some homemade soup right now because it is freezing cold with the Bills Mafia. I had people saying, tear it down. They shouldn't trade for anyone. I heard a radio segment where someone said, trade Deion Dawkins for picks. It was wild this past week. I know Sean McDermott is perfect after the bye. We need to have him go on this winning streak pre-bye because I can't sit through another year if he loses going into a bye week. This week was miserable for a lot of the fan base.
Carl, it's 2 losses, and obviously we saw flaws even during the wins. So that's part of the issue I think that fans have right now is, in the past when they would lose a couple of games, maybe have some struggles, one side of the ball would look really good, while maybe the other side was struggling. This year, both of the sides seem to be susceptible to their own issues.
And I think that's where the fan discomfort is probably heightened more so this year than maybe in previous iterations. Because if I were to ask you on June 5th, what are the 2 areas of concern on this Bills roster? You will say, quite frankly, all 3 levels of the defense, and then you would say the playmakers on offense. And here we are, October 21st, and those are the 2 main concerns again. So if you're a fan, you're like, well, I told you so. Like, I told you this was going to be a problem, and lo and behold, we lost 2 games. We maybe should have lost week 1 to the Baltimore Ravens because those 2 areas aren't playing up to maybe the caliber that we as fans desire. And I understand that, and it's a long year. Who's not to say that these units can't improve? But I think that's a large reason why there is some – it'll be a different thing if the offensive line was struggling all of a sudden. It's like, okay, hold on. We can rely upon maybe some past precedents and say they're going to play better. Or when Josh Allen – I know Josh Allen hasn't played great. No one's concerned about that. It's the wide receivers. It's the defense. And I think that's where maybe some of the fan, once again, discomfort comes from.
You would think that this past weekend maybe calmed some of the nerves of Bills fans, Matt, because you had a chance to actually sit back and not just watch the red zone, because I think a lot of fans fall into that trap where it's, I'm going to watch the Bills game and then I'm going to watch the red zone. Well, if you're just watching the red zone of other teams, all you're seeing are touchdowns. So maybe fans got a chance to sit back and watch teams around the league and go, wow, this is exactly what the NFL wants. There's a ton of parity right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of parity, and I also think, the Chiefs are, like I mentioned, this team that's figured out a lot of things. They're getting guys back healthy. Their defense is looking a lot like it has when it's been really good over the last couple of years. But I also think, playing the Raiders right now is a good way to get right. And, you'd probably say that about the Carolina Panthers before they go on this 3-game win streak. And, the concern, we're going to talk about this in a little while. The concern going into this game is they've found a running game in a way that has to make you afraid if you're the Bills, which are the worst team in the NFL from a run DVOA defensive perspective. And that's a huge concern. So the concerns, to Carl's point, they're valid, right? Like if you were concerned about, all of the different things that the Bills did defensively, and you come out and you're having the same results as you have in years past. And what's saved the Bills in years past is that in the regular season, defensively, they haven't had a lot of the issues that have popped up in the playoffs. And I guess maybe if you're playing devil's advocate, it's like maybe you're working out a lot of the kinks in the regular season, and they're going to be able to flip the switch when you get into the regular season or in the postseason. We'll see if that takes place. But I still don't. I go back to this. I still don't think we've seen a full picture of what this Bills defense is going to be, because I know Michael Hoyt and Larry Ogunjobi have been turned into these miracle workers for this defense. It's not so much about that. It's about what their presence allows for is other players not having to play an elevated level of snaps or even just expectations. Like TJ Sanders is going to walk back into this defense when he gets healthy, if he gets healthy, as the 5th defensive tackle when he was playing at times as the number 2 defensive tackle early in this season. And I think, Maxwell Hairston, as he kind of ramps things up over the next couple of weeks, that's something to watch as well. And, there's going to be some hard decisions on the other side of this bye for Sean McDermott, and maybe they won't be this week. But Terrell Bernard hasn't played to the level that you hoped. Taylor Rapp has had the kind of regression that has to have you searching for answers in that building right now. They might have to make some serious changes personnel-wise. We'll see how soon they're willing to make them, because I think they probably still roll with what they got this week against Carolina. If it goes bad again, then it's going to be the sky is truly falling.
Success can be a hell of a drug. And typically that's a good thing, right? When we hear that applied to sports, well, drugs are kind of bad too. Because what we've seen with this fan base is you get these wins. Look, if they go out and beat the Panthers by 30, there's not a fan out there that's going to be like, everything's fixed. It's not going to happen, right? Even if they beat the Chiefs, right, Ryan? People are going to go, well, they beat them in the regular season. Show me in the postseason. So the Bills are riding this they're on this path in the regular season where they almost have to be perfect in order for the fan base to just chill out. And even then they're going to go, well, let's see what McDermott and those guys can do in the playoffs. Am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. It's like the Debbie Downer character from SNL. They beat the Carolina Panthers, but it's Andy Dalton at quarterback. And you already mentioned the part about the Chiefs in the regular season. Why can't they do it in the playoffs? Everything has to be perfect on both sides of the ball, and it's not going to be. You're going to see a lot of new faces mixed in, and there's going to be some growing pains there too. Now, I think Hoyt's going to come in. He's not I don't want to have unrealistic expectations for him, but I've seen Javon Solomon and AJ Epineza drop back into coverage, and that's not really their forte. That's something he's comfortable doing. We've seen that. I think that he showed a lot this summer at training camp in terms of what he could do for this defense. He can kick them inside. So he's going to add some more versatility there. Larry Ogunjobi is a good fit in a 4-3 defense, or a four-man front, I should say. So that's going to help. It bumps other guys down. It puts Solomon maybe at DN5. It maybe makes Landon Jackson inactive again. And then if you can fix kind of the front part of the spine of your defense, at your defensive line especially, then that helps on the back end, because I do agree you're going to probably roll out Taylor Rapp. He needs to get right quickly, or else you are going to turn the page to either Jordan Poyer or Jordan Hancock.
So we got Ogunjobi and Hoyt coming back off of their 6-game suspensions. Fully expect to see them on the field this weekend. Let's go to the resident expert defensive back now. The big news this week was the Bills opening the 21-day window on Maxwell Hairston, who suffered the injury in training camp. Carl, they have 21 days to either add him to the 53-man roster or he's done for the season. You got to feel like this is a good sign, though, that they feel like within those 21 days he's going to be ready to play. What's the learning curve, though? It's got to be a steep one, I would think.
My man has worn shoulder pads like 3 times. One of them was media day. So, like, I think I want to pump the brakes, and Sean McDermott has tried to do that ad nauseum over his pressers over the past few weeks, where he's like, listen, I understand he's a first-round pick. He oozes athleticism, but he played 1.5 padded practices at camp, and he hasn't been out there with the team with a helmet and shoulder pads at all since then. And that doesn't take into account that cornerback is the second hardest position in all of football, excuse me.
Says the cornerback.
And I mean, but listen, it's not like defensive tackle or DN where it's like see ball, get hit ball. It's not like running back where you just hit your gap. Like, the fact that you're going to have to backpedal and play guys who are supreme athletes time in and time out, it's a faster game. And I think I told someone this the other day. It's not just the playbook. It's not just the routes. It's everything is much faster at the NFL level, and he hasn't seen it. He just truly hasn't. So I'm hopeful that he's able to get reps over the next few weeks, even months. My expectations are minimal, not because of who he is as a player, but this is a steep learning curve. He hasn't played football, like legit football. He hasn't tackled anyone in like 10 months. And that's a lot to throw someone into the fire and expecting results in week 10, maybe week 15 or whatever.
Matt, with all that said, this secondary needs a spark. And, man, that's the carrot that's hanging out there, right? Because this is the guy you drafted in the first round.
Yeah, and honestly, this is probably the best time to have the Brandon Beane conversation because it's almost forced them into this situation, the plan at cornerback this offseason. Like, when you draft a corner in the first round, you basically put all of your eggs in that basket. They put it on the back burner throughout free agency. I can't remember. Did they sign Trey White right before the draft? Right? Didn't they sign him right before the draft and maybe Dane after the draft? I can't remember the exact day, but it was around the draft time. They ignored the position. I remember doing these podcasts back in late March, early April, talking about, like, this has to be the cornerback draft, and there's a great unknown when you bring in, and to their credit, they double dipped, and you can't control when both of your rookie cornerbacks go on injured reserve early in the season. That's a setback that you have to be able to withstand as a defense. But my one pushback on Carl's point is, like, that seems to be, I agree with it. I think that you're asking a lot to put him out there 100% of the snaps and say, sink or swim, good luck, you're a first-round draft pick, just do it. The problem is the lack of options that they have right now, and you could probably get along with Trey White over the next couple of weeks. You could throw Trey White out there against the Kansas City Chiefs. Do I expect it to go well? No, and I would probably argue that even Maxwell Hairston, without all of the reps and the experience, at least his athleticism might give you a chance against some of these explosive playmakers that the Chiefs have at wide receiver. But then again, maybe it won't, and you'd be better served, to Carl's point, waiting until he's fully 100%, because that's another question. When you get him back on the practice field, how is his knee going to respond now to getting back into a fully padded practice? Like, is there going to be soreness? Are you going to be able to go 2 days in a row? How long until you can go 2 days in a row? There's a lot of questions. The problem is the Bills are kind of out of options depending on how things go over the next couple of weeks.
Ryan, where do you land on Max Hairston? I mean, as far as being able to come back and actually make an impact this season. And how much did they need him to make an impact this season?
They need him a lot. They need that spark, as they have mentioned. I go back to the game before the bye week. Can he do any worse than what that secondary did against Drake London in the first half? London was just running like there was no one covering him. It looked like I was out there on the field trying to cover Drake London. If that's what it looks like without him, how can it get any worse with him on the field? And let him take his lumps. Let him make those rookie mistakes on the field and hope that by the end of the regular season, come playoff time, he's more comfortable. He knows the system, and he feels like he can then use his speed and his athletic ability to make plays on the ball, because cornerback has been a major weakness for this team. They need him. Mix him in right away with Trey White once he's ready to play, and then start letting him take over the lion's share as the weeks go on.
All right, fellas, one final topic. We got a chance to sit back, no Bills game, so I'm sure we all sat around and kind of watched what was going on around the league week 7. Let's go around the horn here a little bit and get some of your takes. What was your takeaway from week 7 around the league, Matt?
I mean, I think that we've learned that the AFC is very top heavy. There is just like in the Indianapolis Colts seem legit. The Chiefs seem all the way back. And then after that, it's like this tier of teams that are, the Steelers, the Bills, the Chargers. There's a couple of teams that I think on any given week can be really, really good. And then, the Patriots, you got to throw into that mix as well. And then everybody else, it is just, I think this is the most winnable season in the AFC that the Bills have ever played in since Josh Allen came into his powers, which probably makes the last 2 weeks even more troublesome and probably goes back to the first conversation we had in the show and why Bills fans feel like this anxiety around this thing right now. And I also think, speaking of the AFC, I mean, it is unbelievable to see the depths to which the Miami Dolphins have fallen. I mean, I've never been
right off the cliff.
Mike McDaniel's never really wowed me, right? Like I was, Ryan and I talked about this on the show a couple years ago when they were featured on Hard Knocks during the regular season. If I was the owner of that team watching that show and him in front of the entire NFL world, I'm firing him at the end of that season. That's how little I thought of him as a leader after watching that show. And it's just been a downhill spiral ever since. I think the Patriots, that was a legit win. The Tennessee Titans came out, felt like they were going to play with them, and the Patriots just kind of like little boyed them to a degree and ran away from it. So it's going to be interesting. The AFC East is going to be interesting, but the conference as a whole, to me, it's never been more in sight, the number one seed, I think, for the Bills.
Brian, what was your takeaway from Week 7?
I thought Week 7 was a good reminder that it's a week-to-week league. We saw Atlanta and the way that they defeated the Bills fall to the 49ers, who a very injury-depleted team in San Francisco, and roster construction matters and matchups matter. This Bills roster was kind of put together to give the Kansas City Chiefs a run for their money. It doesn't mean that it's always going to work out against some other teams. And seeing Atlanta run into a buzzsaw in San Francisco, that was one thing. The other thing, too, is even though it hasn't been great for Josh Allen this season, watching some of the other quarterback play around the league, I think that probably should make Bills fans appreciate what they have here in Buffalo.
Carl?
Two things. One, Drake May, I don't think this is a fluke at this point. I know it's been 7 weeks, but he is a dude, and I think that's someone to be reckoned with for the foreseeable future in the division if you're a Bills fan. And then also the Colts, I wanted to watch them start to finish because I know Daniel Jones is the quarterback, and is it fluky, is it not? I don't know the ceiling of that team, but I do know they have a superstar running back. They have a budding star at tight end. They have probably the best collection of pass catchers at wide receiver, at least in the AFC. And when you put that all together, it's a unit that I don't think you can just snuff over anymore. And my only hurdle for them is that I want to see what they look like when they're down 10, when they just can't run the ball and play action pass all game. If they pass that test, that's a team where I don't think you need to put them up there with any other team in the National Football League.
Couple of you guys coming around on the New England Patriots, huh? Because I remember sitting here going, objects may be closer than they appear, and everybody going, pump the brakes, guy. But yeah, the Patriots definitely, they look, to your point, that Drake May's the real deal. My big takeaway was we saw exactly why Mike Tomlin got upset that the Cleveland Browns would trade Joe Flacco to the Cincinnati Bengals. Mike Tomlin wanted nothing to do with that smoke that Joe Flacco has coming out of that cannon. They go and they knock off the Steelers, and I'm telling you, if Joe Burrow can make it back at the end of the season, and I know that that's a long ways away, but suddenly the Bengals are 3-4. Flacco gives them just enough talent at quarterback with those wide receivers that they could be dangerous. Now, look, they can't stop anybody on defense. We knew that coming into the season, though. But suddenly that Bengals team is kind of interesting with Joe Flacco. And that division, Lamar Jackson's not practicing. They've got one win this season. He's dinged up. I don't know that anybody's ever going to say that the Steelers are just this juggernaut, right? I know they're in first place in the division, and the Browns are the Browns. I know they embarrassed the Dolphins, but speaking of the Browns, they may be on that. The Dolphins may be on the Browns level at this point, but yeah, the Bengals to me are going to be a team to kind of keep an eye on a little bit because we've seen offensively what they can do, and if Burrow does eventually make it back late in the season, that's going to be a team that people aren't going to want to face. One other one was Jackson Dart is that guy. I know that he made some big mistakes late in the game, that interception, but he saved Brian Dable's job. And I'm telling you what, Jackson Dart's that dude. He went in to Denver, put 31 on the Broncos defense. And you look like he doesn't have Malik Neighbors anymore to throw the ball to, right? Patrick Surtain, this all-world DB, he's throwing for almost 300 yards and 3 touchdowns against that defense on the road. We sit around and talk about the lack of weapons that the Bills have. Wandale Robinson was their leading wide receiver.
My boy 5'7".
Right, exactly. So I gotta say that Jackson Dart, he stood out to me as well. Hey, that does it for this episode of BKL Makes Me Want to Shout. For Ryan, for Matt, for Carl, I'm Josh. Thanks for watching and listening.